Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this AML Compliance webinar from Geodesis. I hope you're well. It's time to start the webinar. I'm just going to give it 1 or 2 minutes, well, not even that actually, just a brief 30 seconds or a minute or so, just for any stragglers who might be getting to us after the start time. So just bear with me. I'm going to go back on mute again, and just about a minute past, we'll crack on. Okay, everybody, good morning, a very good morning to you. Here we are. My name is Johnny Davey. I am the product manager for the conveyancing world within Geodesis. And welcome very much, you're all very welcome to this webinar on supporting your AML compliance. I'm going to just take you through a couple of housekeepings. Normally at this point we would be in a room together, wouldn't we? And I'd say to you, oh, I'm really sorry if when they bring the coffee in it's noisy, or please excuse any technical hitches and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm working from home. I suspect a lot of us are. So please excuse any background noise from myself and my fellow presenters. There's all sorts going on in most people's lives, and I have an exuberant and noisy 4-year-old who, when he hears me talking like this on a webinar or on a chat with colleagues, inevitably appears at my shoulder. So that's the kind of thing we may experience. Don't worry about it. We certainly won't. There's nothing you can do. But if you hear me muttering under my breath to go away, it's aimed at my 4-year-old and not you. So there's the ability to ask any questions on any of the slides and information we give you in the Q&A session on Zoom. So I hope you've used that before. I won't go into the details now. However, all of our contact details will be shared with you at the end of the webinar. So you only have to jot down one email address and you can fire as many questions as you want off to us. Towards the end of the session, which is scheduled to last about 45 minutes, as you can see there, we do have one handover to another presenter where I'll be stopping sharing my screen, and she, Kay, will be starting to share her screen. So it won't be as slick as just her taking control of the mouse. So apologies in advance for that, but again, we're probably all used to that if we were all in the room. You're all automatically muted, so no shouting at me. I won't hear you anyway. But that just makes sense with so many attendees. We've got 63 people in the room, so that's a really good turnout, and we really do appreciate your efforts in joining us this morning, because we know how busy everybody is. So a quick introduction to us in case you don't know who Geodesis are. So there's a few facts up on the screen there in no particular order. We're part of the Anglian Water Group. And we produce the Con29DW, the Drainage and Water Search for the Anglian Water area. As you can see, we're currently the official sponsor for the CQS from the Law Society, working closely with them. We're big into the CQS and conveyancing compliance. That's kind of at the heart of everything we do. And we work very closely with the Law Society in a number of other ways, not the least of which producing the Con29, which the Law Society kind of own. So we have to stick to the very precise letter of the law on that product, but that means you get a good product. And we're a member and current chairmanship actually of the DWSN, who also work very closely with the Law Society. So that's just to give you a little bit of background on us. We run the full gamut of searches from AML that we're doing today, all the way through to local authority searches, which I know is most people's bane of their life at the moment, and also FLIRD and EnviroSearch's SDLT solution, anything you want really. But today is about AML, and here's an overview of what we're going to do. About 45 minutes, and so with 3 presenters with approximately 15 minutes each. Denise from Peacock Risk Management, Denise Butler, is going to start us off with broadly saying, what are the MLRO and MLCO responsibilities? Then I'm going to talk about the main features and benefits of our AML product that might help you out. And Kay, my colleague Kay Toon, is going to give a practical demonstration of that product, just take you through the couple of screens and just show you how easy it is to use. But each of the sessions are only about 15 minutes, so not too onerous. Then I'll be back on after Kay. She'll have to hand back to me again, so apologies for that brief pause while we hand back. And then I'll just wrap up and bid you farewell. So the 3 speakers today, just to give you a little bit of background, you can read the screen there yourself. I won't just read it out verbatim. But Denise Butler is first up, very experienced person in this industry. You can see there the kind of things that she gets into and can help with. Then myself, product manager of Geodesis, and then Kay, my colleague, will be showing you a demo of the AML product. And ultimately, if you wanted to find out more or to get in touch with us, to potentially work with us, then it'd be Kay who you'd be talking to. So I'm just going to come on to the very first screen now, and Denise Butler is going to talk to you about anti-money laundering and financial crime, and I'm just going to do the hopefully slick pass over to Denise. Here we go. Denise, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Denise, all yours, and then I'm watching anyway, and we'll know when you've finished, and I'll be back involved.
Okay, lovely. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. I'm sitting in the top of a hill looking out onto a misty, snowy landscape, but I love the snow, so it's not too bad. We're going to talk a little bit about anti-money laundering and financial crime. You'll see that the title is Money Laundering Compliance Officer and Money Laundering Reporting Officer Responsibilities. You'll probably know that the SRA is already being very proactive, visiting firms to do anti-money laundering audits. They've got a 3-year rolling programme. If all of you, I suspect all of you that are involved in this webinar are in the world of conveyancing, so I'm afraid you're the highest risk area. Obviously, you're dealing with transactional work and a lot of client funds, so it's highly likely that at some point, if you haven't already been chosen for an audit in the next 3 years, you will be chosen. And what we're finding is that money laundering compliance officers, who I'll focus on just for the minute, still don't always really know what their role is and how they're supposed to get all this stuff done and how to get it done. So that's why we're focusing on that topic today. If you're not a money laundering compliance officer or a money laundering reporting officer, please don't zone out. Please still keep your ears pricked up, because what we say to the people that have got that officer responsibility is, yes, you're wearing the hat, you've got the responsibility on your shoulders, but it's not about you doing everything. It's about you orchestrating the doing of it through the firm. So, for example, if you're a head of conveyancing, I might expect that you would feed information back to your money laundering compliance officer, talk about the types of clients that you've got, any issues that you've got, whether policies and procedures are working. You've all got a role to play. We'll be talking about file reviews, risk assessments at the start of the matter. These are doing things that have to be happening day in, day out. So really, this is about how everybody feeds into the success of getting a good result if you do get an audit. Johnny, how do I move on? I've just clicked the space bar, but it hasn't, thank you. So the Money Laundering Compliance Officer and the Money Laundering Reporting Officer roles both require a good understanding of the AML regulations and how the firm is complying with them. But the difference in those two roles is that the Money Laundering Compliance Officer is considered to be a proactive role. In other words, you're the person that really from the get-go has to check the firm's position, whether the work that you're doing is regulated work. Obviously, if you're doing conveyancing, it is. There's been some recent guidance on tax advisors and whether you're actually giving tax advice as part of your work. You will already be registered with the SRA as being firms that are doing work that's regulated for money laundering. So the fact that that tax advisor guidance came out the other week won't affect you that much because you'll already be saying, I think, that you're doing it. You need to be on top of any changes in the firm. So, for example, if you take on a new manager, a new boom, which is the beneficial owner officer manager, whether you take on any new staff members, that you get disclosure checks done. Sometimes you may take on a new manager and then you've got to fill in one of the SRA's FA10B forms to let them know that you've taken on a new person. So it's about being on top of that. Again, you don't have to do all that yourself. You might have a practice manager or a HR department to help you, but you need to be on top of it. We do a lot of CQS applications and re-accreditation applications, and it's a really regular occurrence that when we get into that process, the CQS team come back saying, we didn't know about this person, we didn't know about that person. So it's a regular problem that we see. Policies and procedures need to be up to date, in place and working. You need to make sure that you've organised the right level of training and, importantly, ensure that it's logged on people's training records, because if you get an AML audit, the SRA will expect to see that. And you're also expected, and I think Johnny will be talking about this later on, to manage your relationships with providers that you choose. And the classic example in this scenario is the provider that you may be using to do your electronic AML checks. You know, there's a lot of talk now about electronic ID and verification checks, particularly during the COVID lockdown when people haven't been able to meet clients face to face. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you are expected to choose your providers carefully and understand that relationship. The Money Laundering Reporting Officer is a reactive role. So if you think that you've got any concerns about a client that might be trying to launder money through your firm, you would go to your MLRO. And any suspicious activity reports that have to be made would be made by the MLRO. In many firms, those two roles are covered by the same person anyway, but they are considered to be slightly different roles. So the first question and the starting point really is, have you done a firm-wide AML risk assessment? So this is where you would look at all the different types of work that you do in the firm. And there's several things that you have to include in this risk assessment. So the types of clients that you have, whether they're local, whether they're at a distance, whether they're individuals, whether they're companies, what kind of transactions are they coming to you to ask you to give legal advice on. So the range of services that you offer as a firm, and whether or not the legal services that you offer are regulated for money laundering. Again, for conveyancing, that obviously is regulated for money laundering. The types of transactions that you're dealing with, the size of them, and the delivery channels that you're using to deliver your services. And that can include, using case management systems, emails, you might have secure document transfer systems, you might have a portal that clients can log into, but you need to look at those delivery channels and include them in your risk assessment. And we normally would suggest that an AML risk assessment is a standalone document. We sometimes see it sort of incorporated in the middle of office procedures manuals, but the SRA may well ask you to send that document or upload it onto your MySRA portal. So it's just easier to have that in place if it's a separate document. And in any case, you do need to review it at least annually or when things change. So it's easier to do that if you've got it as a separate document. Things changed during COVID. So, we would expect to see a review at that point. This is one of the areas where we do assist firms quite a bit with a firm-wide AML risk assessment. But how familiar are you with it? Because when you look at that document, that really leads to how you then define your policies and procedures. So you need to have anti-money laundering policies and procedures in place. We call it a prevention of financial crime manual because we include other things in that manual as well, such as anti-bribery, tax evasion, bogus law firms. So we provide a manual that's got more in it than just anti-money laundering. But you need to make sure it's up to date and, importantly, that it's being rolled out to the team and that they know where it is, know what's in it. If you do get audited by the SRA, they will pick a number of your team to interview. During lockdown, they've been doing telephone interviews, but they could, depending on the situation, visit the firm. But people will get chosen for interview, and if they don't know where that manual or those policies and procedures are, that's not going to look too good. And we always say we don't expect them to know it off by heart, but we do expect them to know where it is, what it's about, what they can find in it, where they would refer to if they want to know a particular piece of information. And an office procedures manual or a prevention of financial crime manual is just purely a description, really, of what you're expected to do and how you are carrying out those procedures in your firm. So we provide and would normally expect to see a suite of supporting templates and risk assessments that support that manual, a risk assessment at the start of the matter, things like a property and mortgage fraud risk assessment. So have you got an up-to-date suite of templates? Are they developed? Do you have a good understanding of them and what is appropriate when? For conveyancing, you would probably do the sort of highest level of risk assessment. If you do, for example, wills and probate, that kind of work, or family, other areas of money laundering work where it's not such high risk as conveyancing, you might have a slightly watered down risk assessment for those types of work, but you will have a suite of templates that you need to use and then make sure that they're on the files, and that it should be shown up in your file reviews if people aren't using them properly. We also try and see whether or not people's case management system is utilised in order to support you with your compliance. So really, from a money laundering point of view, there's usually a place within a case management system where you can store client ID and also any other supporting documents, such as a report that you might get from an electronic anti-money laundering check. What we find difficult is if people just incorporate all of those documents amongst the rest of the legal file, so that you're trawling through electronic documents trying to find what you need, and it'll really slow down your file reviews, and then that puts everybody off doing them. So not just try and find where that place is. You know, we know quite a few of the case management systems, we don't know all of them, but there normally is a particular place to save customer due diligence documents. File reviews form a big part of any compliance, really. For anti-money laundering, you are expected to do, I mean, whether you're a law firm, estate agents, it's the same. You are expected to do regular spot checks and audits to demonstrate that your policies and procedures are working. Now, because we're all within the legal sector, you're expected to do more robust file reviews anyway to comply with the SRA regulations. So within your file reviews, you will hopefully incorporate, has customer due diligence been done? Is the client ID visible? Is the evidence that ID has been verified? Has an electronic check been done? Can we see evidence of that, or a report, or any concerns? So if you do your file reviews regularly, that's what's going to demonstrate to you as the MLCO that everything's working in the practice. And again, depending on how big your firm is, it's not about you doing all the file reviews. You may have a team of or heads of departments that do those file reviews, but you should look regularly at the data coming out of those file reviews and see if you've got any concerns or trends that need rectifying. So that definitely forms an important part of your procedures. You also are expected to carry out a certain level of what we call employee screening. So certainly when you take on new people, and potentially if you've never done this in the past, you might want to do some of it for your already employed team, but you're really looking at ways of checking whether those people have got the right skills, knowledge and expertise, and also to see whether their conduct and integrity is sound. So when you take on a new solicitor, you can check with the SRA for conditions on their practicing certificate or any current disciplinary action that may be still happening. The SRA will reply to you and you can put that on their personnel file. I think it's the operations@SRA email address. So that's one thing that you can do. Disclosure checks, you have to do these anyway for CQS for all your conveyancing team for relevant people. It's not a bad idea to make it a policy that you do it on all new people. You've also got to do it for any new managers and beneficial owners. So, you know, you're already familiar with that. Taking up references, things like adverse media checks. It's not uncommon these days for people to have a quick look around social media and see if there's anything a bit odd or a bit dodgy that you can see. There is quite a lot you can find out about a person, unfortunately, in these days. You can get your team to sign an annual competence declaration. This could form part of the training declaration anyway that you have to make to the SRA every year. Carrying out annual appraisals also sort of forms part of this, finding out what training needs people have and whether or not, you know, they are comfortable and competent in their role. And keeping updated training records. Again, we often see that training records are not easily visible. They're not in a central place. When we're doing CQS applications and we ask for people's training records, there always seems to be a lot of scrabbling around. And really, it's just one of those things that people need to do as they go, which is as soon as you've had today's training, this session can be logged on your training record, then just do it as you go and make your lives easier and have them in a central place so that people in your team are responsible for updating their own training records. Customer due diligence is obviously a topic all on its own, but as the MLCO, it is your responsibility to make sure that customer due diligence is carried out and working properly in the firm. So within your office manual or prevention of financial crime manual, there should be descriptions of what customer due diligence is. There's different levels of customer due diligence. There should be a comprehensive description of what simplified due diligence is, standard due diligence and enhanced due diligence. That can vary from firm to firm because if we go back to your anti-money laundering risk assessment, that's where you set out what you class as a high-risk client or high-risk work, and that will then lead you into deciding what type of due diligence you're doing. So hopefully that is clear in your manual. You need, as previously described, to do your spot checks and file reviews. And as part of your due diligence, it's part of that process to ask the right questions of your electronic AML searches provider. Now, some guidance was published only last week on the Law Society from the Legal Sector Affinity Group. And you might want to write this down, but if you go to section 7.3 of that guidance, there is some guidance on AML electronic ID and verification. In other words, the sorts of things that you should be asking of your provider to make sure that they are relevant and up to scratch for what you need. Things like establishing where their source of data is, whether they use more than one source of data, features such as biometric checking, whether or not there's things like an app on a smartphone. So it's a long list and quite a subjective list, and we're still working on developing what we can do. And I think Johnny is going to talk a little bit more about this, but just be aware that it's sort of part of your role as the MLCO to look into that. you need, as the MLCO, to make sure that your team has had sufficient training and awareness raising. We do awareness raising sessions. These are practical sessions, usually in a room in a little workshop, because that's where it works best with people asking questions and answers. There are also sort of obviously online training courses. There's recommended trainers with the Law Society that you use anyway for your CQS mandatory courses. And then the reason I've said training for people in other work areas, what we often see is that because conveyancing firms are part of the CQS quality scheme, you have to do mandatory courses. But what we then find is that people in the firm that do probate or family are not really doing sufficient training. They're sort of getting left behind a bit. So as the MLCO, I'm afraid you're going to have to check what's suitable for them and what training they need. Because again, if you get audited by the SRA, they are going to check things like that. And you need to also, again, make sure that it's logged on people's training records. You need to carry out what's called an independent audit. And it's a little bit misleading because what people have interpreted that to mean is that you can't do it yourselves. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you can do it internally, but if you're the MLCO, then you're not the person to do this, because the person to do the internal audit needs to be checking that you, as the MLCO, has got all the right things in place. So you can do it internally if you've got a big enough team and the right resources. You need to do a sort of spot check that things are working, that policies and procedures are up to date, that file reviews are happening. So there is a sort of formatted checklist that you can do, or you can seek assistance externally from people like us. And that is something that we are being asked to help firms out with. But you just need to know what is your approach and who is involved. So, you know, we might have a firm that does say to us, please, can you review our policies and procedures? We would just like to have another eye on them. But they don't want us to carry out a swathe of file reviews because they're actually happy that they're doing that sufficiently themselves. Or sometimes they will say to us, can you please do a swathe of file reviews? We would just like somebody else to do that and help us and get us to see whether we have got any gaps. You need to ensure that your core documents are reviewed annually or when things change. So that's your policies and procedures, your anti-money laundering risk assessment. And then other areas need regular attention, such as file review data and checking that training is up to date. So the ongoing monitoring of all of this is a requirement, but at least once a year, you should really document in quite a formal way that you've checked all of this and that somebody separately to the MLCO is involved in that, so that it's not completely all on their shoulders. So that brings me to the end of all the information that I've got to give you. I think you can type questions into the chat section. Is that right, Johnny? Yeah, if you have got any questions.
Absolutely, and we'll pick up any questions. And if not now, then during the rest of the slides or at the end or even afterwards via email. And we rest assured that we'll find out any answers to the questions on Denise's section and come back to the individual concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. That's great. So I'm back in control for once in my life. Anyway, here we go. So the next session is myself, actually. So you've heard there from Denise about the option to get assistance from Peacock Risk Management, and we can help with that. Just get in touch, but you have the option of getting in touch towards the end. But I'm now going to take you through some slides that describe our product that will help you achieve a huge chunk of what Denise is talking about from a AML practicality point of view, and including in it some elements that, you know, if Denise and her colleagues were to come along and check you out, so to speak, they'd go, oh, okay, tick, 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 that's all in order. So it's really hard to get the features and benefits of this product across without it being quite wordy. So you'll excuse me if I paraphrase some of the slides just to get the pace on. But you can read the screen, of course, so I won't just verbatim read it out. So what the intention is, so it's just to reinforce the messages from Denise at Peacocks and explain how we can help if you need us. It will broadly help you understand what our AML solution can do and its main features and benefits. And of course, we could come and train you in the our AML solution, not train you in your responsibilities and roles around AML. That's for people like Denise, but we can provide training, a quick session for all of your staff on our AML solution. So why have we even got this? Well, as you may recall, way back in June 2017, the 4th anti-money laundering directive came along, then the 5th, and actually there were some further amendments just gone, 1st of January 2021, although because of the situation the world is in, signing up and getting ready for all of that, well, you didn't have to sign up, but I just mean getting yourself in a good state for that if it affected you, has been extended through till June. But that was mainly about letting agents and the sort of fine art market and including their requirements for AML there. So my point is, it's ever changing. New laws and new directives seem to come along like buses. And so we have to keep on top of that. And luckily our product keeps you on top of that. So a summary of what changed in those three kind of pivotal moments is the following. It became your responsibility to have a firm-wide risk assessment in place. It also meant all clients must be risk assessed. I love giving examples or analogies, but so if your mother-in-law walked in and she wanted you to act on her behalf when buying a house, you've got to get her AML checked out. So it's your mother-in-law, you know who she is, where she's from, where her money's coming from, where she lives. You don't need to see a passport to know it's her, but actually, yes, you do. If you were to proceed and act on with her and not carry out an AML, you'd be in breach of those regulations. So all clients must be risk assessed. I think there was previously a bit of an understanding that if it was your husband, let's say, you wouldn't have to. You really do. Sanction screening and PEPs, politically exposed persons, was also required, is now required. It didn't used to be for everybody, but it is now for all clients. And all the customer due diligence records must be kept, made available to regulators. If you get that knock on the door, the SRA, the Law Society, Financial Ombudsman, whoever else it is who checks these things out, you've got to have something that you be able to show them for every AML that you've run. Continuing with this list of stuff that they expect from you, this is a killer. Ongoing due diligence monitoring for all clients. So let's just pause a minute and imagine that. So on the 1st of February, you run an AML on someone, it all gets cleared, you pass it, or they pass it, if that's a word. You know, you're happy to proceed with them, and you do your business, and 2 months later, it's all concluded. They pay you, and that's it. But actually, the new laws demand that you keep monitoring that client for any major change in their information for a year. So that the administrative and overheads on that is just crippling. So ongoing due diligence. So just hold that thought for a moment. That's really important. But that's required now for all your clients. Record keeping requirements must be adhered to. Well, what does that mean exactly? So in summary, it means that any data you collect must be kept for 5 years after the end of your business relationship. Okay, 5 years. However, it must then also be deleted after 5 years, not immediately, but soon. So after the 5 years, you've got to keep it. You've then got to remove it, unless you can gain explicit consent to keep it. So you can, in your customer care letter, for example, you could say that any data gathered by you to establish that person's identity or source of funds will be kept for 10 years or forever, or as long as they understand that and they sign up to that, then that's fine. But if not, then you've got to delete it after 5 years. And this requirement currently trumps that 4-letter word beginning with G, ending in R, and with a D and the P in the middle. Okay, so those laws, the GDPR laws, are rife, but this trumps that. Keeping or deleting data for AML purposes trumps any GDPR requirement. So what else? You can no longer exempt people from having enhanced due diligence. It used to be that certain people could say, you could say, we don't need to check Bishop Davey out because he'll be fine. Choices like that, no longer. So people aren't automatically exempted from doing enhanced due diligence on them. And this is going to sound awful, and I really don't mean it to anybody in the virtual room. We still come across examples of customers of ours who, or potential customers of ours who we say, what are you doing for your AML checks? And they are getting, upon first meeting the client, the receptionist takes a photocopy of their passport or driving license and gives the driving license back to the person and puts the photocopy they've got in the file, and the file is put in a drawer, maybe a case file, and that's it. And I kid you not, we still get that. I hope it's nobody here listening. And if it is, I can't sugarcoat this. That is simply not good enough. And the majority of you are nodding, saying, well, of course it isn't. Because just taking a copy of the document and filing it does not check that person out. Doesn't even check really that they are who they're claiming to be. But we the last time in the previous world when we were out and about and calling on customers and doing sessions like this, that was still the practice in some places. Just took a copy of the passport and filed it. Plainly not good enough. And we can't shy away from pointing out that that's not good enough. So as Denise touched on, electronic verification now must be used when reasonably available. And so if you've got no internet or you don't use computers in your company, then fine, but for the vast majority it is available. And e-money and cryptocurrencies are all treated the same as cash now. Beneficial ownership data is out there, and it's been made law again that high-risk countries need much more customer due diligence. And very broadly speaking, but again, it's slightly sensitive subject, but very broadly speaking, the further east you go from the British Isles, the less reliable and less comprehensive the data gets. That's I've made a massive blanket statement there. And of course, it doesn't apply to everyone, everywhere. And by the time you get back round east, go into Australia and back round to America, back round to the UK, it changes in and out. But it's just a factual result of public and private data provision in some countries. It can get quite hard to get reliable and accurate information. And we see that in the AMLs we run. 99% certainty that you'll get what you need for Bob in Bolton. But if you suddenly go to some other countries, it can be really difficult to get decent information out of them. And you have to just expect that. And unfortunately, it then boils down to just your professional expertise, gut feel, and your appetite for risk within your company on whether you continue with that individual or not. There are some severe penalties for non-compliance. I can't imagine for one moment the SRA, for example, would turn up on your door, find out you hadn't run an AML for somebody, and fine you £1 million. I don't think it's quite as black and white as that. You, I'm sure, would get the chance to put things right or to get your house in order, but just be aware that those penalties are in place. So all of that list, those previous couple of slides, means work for you. It means a bit of a pain. You must demonstrate that risk assessments are conducted and kept up to date. You must get policies and procedures in place, all of these things that Denise touched on. You must test those policies and make sure they're fit for purpose. You must implement reporting and records management. So that's a lot of work. But guess what? And hence my little slot here this afternoon, apart from hosting for Denise's great advice, we have a solution. Nearly 18,000 individual users currently use it in about 8,500 clients across the UK. Not all from us, I hasten to add, resulting in about 1.6 million searches to date. It's tried, it's tested, and it works pretty well. And here's how it works. Please, I kind of hate this slide, even though it's my own. I'm just going to advance it, but then go back again. There's a low risk, a medium risk, and a high risk AML you can run on your client. And so this is just to try and show you the default settings in our product. If you identify the client as low risk and you're meeting them face to face, then you need one ID check, one address check, and one other random check of that information. And then it will give you the results. However, if you're not meeting them and it's all done by phone and email, which is perhaps more prevalent today than previously, it will check that one ID that they give, check out an address proof that they give, but also run two other random checks on that data. So can you see how that works? And if you're at their home, that's a huge level of fraudulent planning if they're sat in an address that's not theirs, and they've put a pretend picture of them and their dog on the mantelpiece, and the address all checks out in the name, and it's not actually their house, although it has happened. That's very unlikely to cause you an issue. So one ID check, one address check, and actually no other random checks. So that's low risk. And you can just see how it builds. Medium risk is 2 ID checks, an address check, and 2 random checks if you're doing it by phone and email, but only 1 random check you're face to face. And so it goes on. And so this is the default settings. And so you can apply either a low, a medium, or a high risk category to each of your clients. They could be a regular customer of yours that you've dealt with 20 times. They're likely to be very low risk. It could be somebody who walks in off the street and just says, oh, I just wanted to buy a house. So that's probably going to be high risk. You've never met them before or know of them or not been recommended to anyone. So that could be high risk. It's just to show you that simple choice is one step that Kay will show you after I've spoken, enables you to set those parameters in the kind of algorithms that happen in the background and the amount of checking that it goes off and does for you. You don't have to do anything, of course, other than that first choice. And you can see there, we can do simple or enhanced due diligence at different prices. As Denise again touched on, simplified due diligence probably sufficient for probate work or changing a will or something like that. But for a house transaction, and we're here today because we deal in the conveyancing world ourselves, that's almost certainly going to be enhanced due diligence from either a medium or a high risk piece of work. So there's a list there, I won't read them all out, of what gets checked. So again, Denise wisely said, ask your AML provider what data they check. So there's a not complete, I don't think, list, but the last time I pulled that from our supplier of the AML check, there's the list of stuff that gets checked. And it's a simple 4-step process for you. You put in the customer's details, you put in the supporting documentation, you confirm your relationship with them, and you choose your risk profile approach, low, medium, or high. So again, just the only thing that's worth mentioning there is the supporting documentation, the second point down. There's a long list of stuff that the ID can get checked against, but there's only actually 2 electronically checkable places that you can verify an address on. I could get a Next catalogue or a mobile phone delivered to any address in the world I wanted. And so it's no good just producing that and saying, look, there's my address, because I could get it sent there and it would have no relationship to my actual home address. Whereas 2 documents that can get checked is a mortgage statement and a utility bill. So no matter where those bills get sent to, they always have on them the address that the service relates to. So in other words, the address that the mortgage is on, or the address that the electric or gas or water is getting supplied to, even if I get them sent to an address somewhere else. So those are the only 2 that the AML provider can go off and check and electronically verify. We do have a method of getting around that, if that's the right words to use, when you have a client who doesn't have either of those documents, that's fine. And we can arrange to get that dealt with within your solution in our website. So don't worry if for those outlying, maybe a old age pensioner who no longer has a mortgage and actually lives in a home and hasn't got a utilities bill, or 16-year-old lad buying his first house, living with his parents, again, doesn't have anything in his name of that nature. And that's fine, and we can get past that. But that's the default setting again. So you get 3 different results. You get a compliant. That means that all the details checked out, the person's found, nothing dodgy that gets flagged, and you're okay to proceed should you wish to. Or it gets referred, something just didn't quite check out. Do you want to just get something amended and resubmit it? Or you need to be aware of something and you could still say, yeah, that's fine, I understand that. Maybe the guy's got a CCJ against him or something, but it's 10 years old or something like that. You might well say, yeah, I'm fine with that for the work I'm doing for them. Or it could be non-compliant. Something's wrong. Either the name is wrong, date of birth's wrong, they've said their name's Teddy when in fact it's Edward, for example, or they've been found and, yeah, actually don't deal with this guy or gal for all sorts of reasons. You can at that point still choose to proceed, believe it or not, but you can. You can say, yeah, understand it's non-compliant, talked it through with the client, I understand what the issues are, go ahead anyway. But all of that is documented. So you just put a little note on the file and you'd say, yeah, I'm proceeding, because that might be within your risk profile that you wish to sort of stick to. So just in summary, you need a risk assessment for everyone. The AML automates it, making it really easy for you to do that on absolutely everybody. It checks all the sanctions, warning lists, and does PEP screening. AML does that as well. Politically exposed persons. I forgot then what the PEP stood for. Politically exposed persons. You've got to do that now, and it does. Record keeping. You've got to keep the records, and you've got to dispose of them. And it does that for you. Excuse me. It has simplified and enhanced due diligence. You've got to provide standard and enhanced, or does that? It's the wrong way around. Excuse me. And you've got to monitor compliance in real time with reports available. And of course, it allows you to do that as well. You can download a report that gives you everything you need to show any regulator of the AMLs you've carried out. And it gives you that ongoing due diligence. Remember that really heavy overhead that I mentioned? AML gives you that as well. So it keeps checking the data that you've put in. And if anything significant changes, it emails you to the dashboard and says, oh, you just need to know that this is wrong, or this passport has been stolen, or now found to have been, or reported to have been stolen. So it does that for you, which is a massive saving of overheads for you. And then finally, there's also the AML Dashboard. So it will detail for you forevermore who passed, who got referred, what you did to action any of those referrals, who carried it out within your organization, at what risk level. It gives you a place to store all the any electronic copies that you scanned in or took for proof of ID or address or other documentation, and it summarizes your risk approach. The ongoing alerts are also there on the dashboard as well. So again, you can visit and revisit those anytime you want. And it does that data cleansing. So it keeps all the data internally for 5 years, and then automatically cleanses that data after 5 years, although you can set that to whatever you wish. So it's basically a single location for all your AML needs. £3 for a simple search, £6 for enhanced search, and of course there are personal and non-personal versions. Denise mentioned the latest sort of advice out from the Law Society on money laundering, and there's a link to it there. These slides will be available after the session, so don't worry about frantically jotting that down. We'll send the slides out in a couple of days. and also a really useful document, which is a review, a sort of summary of the SRA's visits that they carried out within 2019 and 20. And there's some great findings in there of what people were and weren't doing, you know, in a positive and sometimes in a slightly less positive way. So it's great guidance to say, oh yeah, well, we do that, we better stop, or we don't do that yet, we better start. So I'd recommend accessing both of those documents. But again, that will be on the slides we send out in a few days. Just one last slide from me before I hand over to Kay, which is just to remind you, the Law Society will check that you're following the latest AML regulations in their assessments. So section 3, question 5 there. Is there a documented AML risk and fraud assessment on the matter file? So we can't hide from this. You've got to do it. We're here to help if we can. We think we've got a pretty neat product from a well-established partner who does nothing but AML checks. And so you need to let us know, and there's a sort of call to action on the very last slide today to say how you can do that. Now, for those of you who are with me from the very, very start on my housekeeping slide, this is the bit where if we were in a room together, we would perhaps disconnect from one laptop and connect to another, and as slickly as we could, and you'd barely notice. And so we've got to do that now in that I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The Zoom call will stay open, and you'll just see a black screen, but I'll be passing over to my colleague Kay, who will start sharing her screen. That makes sense. And she's just going to give you a brief demo on the AML system and show you what it looks like kind of in real life. And then when Kay's finished, she'll pass back to me in a similarly seamless manner. And I'll just close up with just one final slide and thank you for attending. So just stick with us while Kay gives you a quick demonstration. It will hopefully give you a flavour of how to use our solution. So bear with us while we just switch over.
Hi, Johnny. Sorry, it keeps telling me that you've disabled the screen share.
I have, Kay, but I've just made you host, so you should be, there you go.
Right, hi everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen now. I'm going to keep this shorter because I am aware that we have really overrun with time. But this is our case dashboard to our system. I'm not going to go through it all because I'm here just to concentrate on AML. But if I was the MLRO, I could not only view my own cases to check that AML has been carried out, I could view all the branch cases and do spot checks to check that AML searches have been done. So if I click on my case and click for compliance checks, it's very easy to use. Now our solution is a cloud-based solution, which basically means you only need a current web browser and an internet connection, and you can grant access to as many or few users within your practice. On this little information icon, you can look for a product card sample, and it will give you the product T's and C's. So if I want to start ordering an AML search, it's very, very easy to do. Now, please note that you are going to be compliant as soon as you start doing it without you even knowing, because here you've got your compliance tick. And please note it's a legal requirement that you have informed your client that you will be carrying out an AML search using their personal data prior to entering any client data on the AML search. So this automatically prompts you to do it. Now, I'm not going to fill in all the forms, so I'll use some test data. And you can see this is what the forms looks like. So it asks for identification, date of birth, address, and what type of relationship and what type of interview we're taking place. So I can put a completely new client but known to staff, or existing client. So as Johnny said, if you're doing your mother-in-law, you still need to do an AML check. And again, what interview type? Face-to-face, or as we are in these COVID times, over the phone, or by post or online. And then this is where you would select your level of risk assessment. Now, if you're in any doubt here, what correct risk assessment to choose, please seek advice from your compliance officer or your MLRO. But most conveyancing transactions would be high risk. But I'm just going to tick a low risk for this demonstration, just so I can do a simplified due diligence. If I chose the high risk, it would only give me the option of doing an enhanced due diligence. So just to give you a little indication of some of the documents. Now, this is an existing client, so I can choose an existing document. If that document has expired, it will not allow me to choose it. But it hasn't expired, so I'm using the current existing document. Now for this next one, I'll choose a document. So I'll add a new document. It asks me what type of document. So here, I'm going to choose a utility bill. Document reference, which will be on the utility bill, and the expiry date. So if I just put February 2021. Now, please know, in case of documents without an explicit expiry date, for instance, like a utility bill, the expiry date you should enter should be 3 months from the issue date of the document. Now here, upload a document, scan image. So rather than taking a photocopy of the documents, use the electronic upload document. You just simply drag and drop it into the file. So by storing your documentary evidence inside each AML search, you can easily demonstrate your compliance with record keeping requirements and the regulatory need to remove all client due diligence records after 10 years, because it's centrally managed for you. The relationship tab, this records if you're like husband and wife, and so it will add the relationship to another AML check. And that's it. It's simply got all the compliance, the identity, the address. So if I just click on continue, and these are the results, it gives me the results, it's come back compliant. And I can download this, put it in my case management system for documentary evidence, or keep it within the AML solution. So just one more thing, if I go to case dashboard, which Johnny mentioned. So this is where, I do apologise.
You need to be going to the AML dashboard. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So yes, as Johnny mentioned, this product comes standard with your simplified, medium and high risks checks. If you want to, as a company, do your own check, this is where you could add an additional risk profile. Now, if you're not comfortable about doing it, just let Johnny or myself know and we'll be more than happy to do it for you. So that's a quick snapshot of our AML solution. So back over to you, Johnny.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Great. So if you stop sharing, and this is that ultra swish swap over again, and then I'm coming back. I need to make myself as host. Actually, Kay, you need to make me host again, if you don't mind. Kay, you still there?
Yeah, I can't.
Okay, just
let me do it.
Just click on my name, or you should be able to see on your name to sort of give up host on the right.
Yeah. Host more.
Okay, bear with us, folks. There we go. I'm back as host now. That's great. Thank you, Kay. So I told you it'd be seamless, everybody. You didn't even notice. Here we go. So I'm now back. So last slide, literally. Thank you ever so much for sticking with us, guys. We have run slightly over, but not too bad. Anti-money laundering, there you go. We don't just do AML, of course. And if you're interested in using us for your conveyancing searches, then please get in touch with Kay, whose details are on the screen there now. Just a little tempter for you. Your first month's AML we'll do free of charge for you as part of your search pack. Why not come and give us a try and see if Geodesis can help you. Get in touch if you need details of Denise and the Peacocks offering, or as I say, get in touch with Kay there. We'll look up any questions that have been left for us and get back to you. And in a couple of days' time, we'll send out the copy of these slides. Thank you ever so much again for your attention. We really do appreciate it in this busy time. Stay safe out there, stay well, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks again.